This is StoryRobot. Welcome to r/RegularRevenge. Our story of today is a song of OSHA, beepholes and fire. This all happened about 11 years ago, right around the height of the Great Recession. I had recently been laid off from my teaching position, a month after purchasing my first home, and was struggling desperately to find a new job. My now ex-wife was still in college and we were a one-income household. I know, not the smartest of me, but I was young and ambitious, and failed to foresee the school districts laying us all off. Who knew government jobs weren't secure? Act 1. The Beephole Puckers. After about 6 months of struggling to even get interviews, I happened upon a position as a body shop estimator about 40 miles from my home. I say it happened, but more it was a practice in nepotism, as the manager of the shop was a friend of my father's, and, after having been on food stamps for months, I wasn't going to be picky. Anyways, so the first day rolls around and the manager is giving me the tour when, lo and behold, Bob the Beephole walks in. As a bit of context, Bob the Beephole is one of the grandchildren of the company founder, and the only child from the father's second marriage. Apparently he was conceived on an airplane when his father cheated on his mother with a stewardess. This is relevant later, I swear. Well, Bob, being a right ornery git with a rather serious inferiority complex, lays right in on me. Who the beep is this? My manager, already taken aback, introduces me and lays out the whole spiel. I shake his hand and we converse a bit. He's fairly amenable until he finds out I used to be a teacher. Now, I'm not sure what happened to this poor boy at his private school. Maybe some coach tickled his tinkler, but damn if he didn't switch moods faster than a redneck at Red Lobster. So, boy, I want you to understand something. I may be part of the family that owns these dealerships, but that doesn't mean I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And I want you to understand something. I don't like cheats and I don't like liars, and if I ever catch you doing either, I'll make sure you never work in this town again. Well, damn. That damn near defined our working career for the next 16 months. Bit ironic, since the town was kind of podunk and I was driving there from one of the largest cities in Texas, but I digress. So, why is this all relevant? Well, you need to have a good idea of the level of assholery I was dealing with Bob. Now comes the revenge. This is a revenge plot in 2 acts. One a premeditated act of maliciousness, and the other a pissed-off act of opportunity. Act 2, the OSHA. At this point in my personal Texas tragedy, it's been 6 months and I've learned that Bob's temper isn't a temporary thing. The man has repeatedly threatened myself and my boss over the past 6 months. If we didn't meet the repair quota, he was going to fire us. The process would repeat each month. As the end of the month neared, the harassing phone calls would start, then the yelling, then the screaming, then when we failed to meet quota, the in-person tirade. The manager had also hit the stage where he disappeared for the whole day to avoid the wrath of Bob and let me take the brunt of it. Considering I was making less than $400 a week and working 60-hour weeks, which was calculating below minimum wage and a FLSA violation, my level of give a beep was starting to hit its antapex. To compound my, bless your heart, level of annoyance, by this time I was in charge of all documentation, billing, and payroll for the shop guys. I'd become acquainted with the payroll department, with those lovely people enjoying my help, since I was a bit of a number cruncher myself, and you got a position where I'm doing everything the manager is supposed to be doing, and then some, but getting none of the pay. Now comes the first day of reckoning. Our men's restroom had been broken for 2 months, the only men's restroom in the building. We had a dead rat in the wall that had been stinking up the shop, and our steel pylons for the Bay Area had been eaten through by decades of neglect. Unbeknownst to Bob, I'd been documenting and cataloging these issues and keeping copies of every email I sent regarding the issues with our shop. Also, every time he'd berated us, I documented the outburst, what was said, and any written correspondence that backed up his behavior. After taking some lunch breaks to study up on OSHA violations, I compiled all my findings and sent them on over to OSHA with pictures, emails, etc. At the same time, I took all my documentation of every nasty thing our boss had said to us, including emails and whatnot, and forwarded that over to the head of HR. Well, hell soon followed for poor old Bob. The documentation of verbal abuse and labor violations hit HR's plate and Bob's poor world blew up. He was forced to raise my pay to at least minimum wage equivalent, or forfeit working me 60 hours a week. He also was forced into anger management classes where, and this was my favorite, every time he got pissed off, he had to chant the mantra, kittens and bunnies. OSHA soon followed and sent out an inspector. After confirming all the issues with the shop, the dealership was given an ultimatum: bring the shop up to code or close the dealership. $50,000 later, we had a functioning bathroom, a breezy customer lounge, and supporting steel pylons that didn't groan every time a stiff wind hit. Bob stayed away for a time, but it didn't last. Being the grandson of the owner, he wasn't getting kicked, no matter how much his siblings in the business disliked him. Thus on to Act 2. Act 2, the beep slappening. Fast forward a year and Bob, being the beephole he is, had gotten way more malicious and far more underhanded with his punishments. In the interim between Act 1 and now, he'd introduced ever more stringent red tape between our shop and payroll, billing, parts, and sales, effectively tripling the required paperwork per vehicle repair. A particular example required that we print out the email from the parts department, handwrite in all parts numbers on top of the automated numbers from the estimate, then fax that back to the parts department while also emailing them the same said items, but in type form. If anything didn't match exactly, then he'd try to throw a write-up at me. One time he did and I refused to sign it. Guess it never occurred to him that I would refuse, as he didn't know what to do after and never wrote me up again. By now, I had a new boss, as the old body shop manager had done right and skipped out, and this new guy was pretty much the same. I'd warned him about the tirades, but he scoffed. He learned real quick after we missed quota the first month. Anyways, I had been feeling really under the weather for the past 2 weeks. Sweating, fevered, abdominal pain stretching to my back, the whole standard, this isn't a cold, feel. I went to the doctor and they found I had some nasty kidney stones that had developed as a side effect from my ADHD medication. Took me out for my whole week. Considering I only got 1 week of vacation a year, I wasn't happy. Well, I show back up a week later and Bob decides he needs to put his foot down and calls up the manager. Manager and I had gotten used to his assholery and so he threw him on speakerphone while I listened in. Is Beep back? Boy better have a doctor's note. Yeah, he just got here. He left the note at home, but he'll bring it tomorrow. Not good enough. You tell him to get his Beep back home and bring back the note. He ain't working until you have it in hand. And don't pay him for the missed time. We got cars backing up. If I send him home, you're not gonna have some delivered on time. I don't give a beep. He doesn't work until I have that note, unless he's lying. Yeah, we saw where this was going. Considering it's a 40-mile drive one way, I wasn't too pleased, but I made the trek on back. Along the way, I saw a sign at a body shop looking for estimators, stopped on in and applied. I make it back to my business around 1 p.m., losing about 5 hours of the day to travel at this point. My manager lets Bob know and I immediately get a phone call. Took you long enough. Now, I want you to get out there and give me an update on every project we got in the shop. You got 1 hour. He hangs up before I can acknowledge. I shrug. It's about 30 vehicles. Nothing overly tough, so I head on out and get an update from all the techs. I call him an hour later and get no answer. I go ahead and email him a list of each project and where they are at so he can't pull his usual bull. The day progresses as usual when I get a call at 5 p.m., keeping in mind we close at 6 p.m., which is when I leave. I want you to close out all the projects tonight. I don't care how long it takes you. I am not legally allowed to process payment on vehicles we have not begun work on. Stop being lazy. Close them all out. The average time it took to close each vehicle with our current 90s poding system was around 30 minutes a car. With 30 cars, we were talking about an all-nighter. Considering he'd also made our body shop repair, dealer, cars he had driven and wrecked, then sold them as brand new with clean records. I just wasn't having it, and had no plans to break the law for an beephole I didn't like, so I closed the 10 that were ready to close and left at 8 p.m. Next day, oh hell. Next day was rough. I walk in per usual and get to work when I get a phone call from Bob. Who the beep do you think you are? I told you to close out all the vehicles. Why the beep didn't you? I told you. I'm not breaking the law. I closed out the 10 that were done, stayed over my hours, which I am not supposed to do, and completed as many as possible. He rambled on and ranted for a bit and I took it in stride. I'd written his ire off until he took it one too far. Bullbeep. You're just lazy. See, this is why you're at where you are and I'm at where I am. I know how to work for a goddamn living. I saw red and got quiet. What did you just say? Bob knew he'd stepped in it, but being the ornery beep he wasn't going to back down now. I said what I said, boy. You're lazy, entitled, don't work for beep, and incompetent. And you should be thanking me for where you're at. I lost it. Listen water boy. The only reason you're at where you are is because your daddy got drunk, beeped a stewardess to join the mile club, and got stuck with you. I slammed the phone down and immediately sent his sister, the president of the company, a list of all the beep he'd pulled and how he'd try to make us break the law, as well as his shady dealings with fixing dealer cars under the table and then selling them as brand new. Considering Bob's sister despised him, you can imagine her delight at having solid evidence against her littlest brother. As fortune would have it, I got a call on my cell 10 minutes later saying I had the job at the other location, looked at my manager and quit. Epilogue, kittens and bunnies. The next day, after having never felt freer, I received a call from my now ex-manager. Bob and his sister were at the shop and were shutting it down. Bob had been planning to shut the shop down, but didn't want to give up the profit. He had tried to have me close the vehicles out so he could claim the profits for his shop and pocket the percentage commission, force the other dealerships in his family's business to eat the cost of repairs, then was going to use the added profits as leverage to pitch to his daddy, the owner, over his sister's head, and move himself to a new dealership that made more money. My emails didn't stop the body shop getting closed, but since his sister got wind, she shut his dreams down, sidelined him at the low-performing dealership for another 5 years and got him sent back to anger management, all while moving the rest of the employees to other dealerships within the company and at a higher pay rate. Last I heard, he was still practicing kittens and bunnies every time he gets all heated. Thank you for watching. Error. Problem detected. Not enough subscribers. Please subscribe, like and comment.